Welcome everyone to part four, the coronation and the descent. This is the fourth workshop in my series for the myth of 2026. And yeah, let's get into it. We're entering a story together. So first I want to introduce you to me and my story. My name is Gemma. I am a mother and an archetypal astrologer, so I work with planets as characters, as archetypes, as knowable beings, and I am a devotee of Venus for a long time now. My work has centered around Venus cycles, and it's not been something that I've spoken about so much in the last year, but it's still been just a really core part of my foundation in how I work with astrology and how I look at astrology. I've done a lot of work with Venus cycles and help lead people through them and explain this journey of initiation and descent that Venus goes through. And that's going to be an important part of this section of the workshop. So I want to take a moment to honor the below, the above, the space that we share. North stone, east breath, south fire, west water, and the center that each of us sits within. And then I want to remind you of the journey that we have been on through this series. So in our first workshop, we met Pluto. We spoke about what it means for Pluto, the god of death, to be in Aquarius. We spoke about each of the planets meeting Pluto as an initiation at the start of this year and how he represents this consequence field that exists throughout every part of this year, that everything has consequences, and that he is almost pulling back the veil on the consequences of things that have already happened, the ways in which our structures and our society is affected by everything that happens. And we then spoke about Saturn and Neptune meeting in Aries and his journey through Pisces, his journey over the last year of just being with Neptune, but not quite meeting yet. And there's something really powerful about today, that the day that we're recording, the day of this live workshop, we're just a few hours away from Saturn and Neptune, like properly meeting, and Saturn moving ahead of Neptune, and speeding off into Pisces, into Aries, I mean. And so this is such a powerful moment in the myth of 2026, in the story of this year, and those pivot points that change everything. This is one of those moments. And then we came to the myth of Prometheus. We spoke about Uranus entering Gemini and how we move from this kind of slower, more earthy, body, land-focused energy into the energy of the mind, of information, and how the fire of Prometheus is fast, is dangerous, is powerful, and can create incredible leaps in technology, in the way that we understand things, in the way that we share information. And also, if we're not acting from a place that is grounded and integrated, then it can cause huge amounts of damage very quickly, very unintentionally. And so, speaking about the importance of integration of knowledge, like allowing information to become wisdom, to settle in our bones. And this picture of Earth being the the thing that is so needed, that is so lacking in this story. We see lots of air and fire and even water, but the earth is the piece that we need to keep us grounded, to keep us connected to our own bodies. And that is something that for this year, we're going to have to source that from within ourselves. And so leaning into our felt sense of things, like the physical, the connection to the earth, the slowness um and the gentle progress that is a part of us that we've all lived through, that we all carry some piece of within our charts. Leaning into that energy is going to be really necessary and really powerful throughout this year. And now, and now, gosh, some of these images, I feel like they've become a little bit unhinged as we've moved along, but I so wanted to capture this Jupiterian essence joyfulness, of big-heartedness, um of generosity. He is a generous, benefic king. And as he steps into Leo this year, at the end of June, we see him stepping into that role as king of the gods. Jupiter is, in Greek mythology, he is Zeus, and he has this energy of um, abundant, like almost arrogance and a feeling of optimism, like everything's going to be fine. The and as he moves into Leo, we see this like royal, royal space within our zodiac. Leo is the space of heart-led leadership, of really leaning into the highest expression of what royalty is. I like to think of this place as being similar to the myths that we hear of King Arthur, the really mature, evolved, well expressed Leo is like King Arthur. He creates a kingdom that promotes peace, that promotes equality. He creates a round table for his knights so that he's not sitting above them, so that no one is below him, that they all have an equal space, an equal place within his kingdom. And he lifts people up. He's like looking for the good. He's looking for the ways in which he can serve his kingdom, in which he can serve his people. And how can he bring more joy, more prosperity, more abundance to everyone in his kingdom? I think the mark of a good king is not someone who can stand at the top of the hierarchy, but it's someone who makes sure that even the people at the bottom of the hierarchy are well provided for and are well looked after. And I think that's very much the heart of Leo. And when you meet someone who has a like strong Leo in their chart, they know how to call out the best in other people. As much as they're able to hold space in the center of a room, to hold attention, they're able to call that out of other people too. They're able to recognize how other people shine, as well as knowing how they themselves shine. And so this is the highest possible expression of Jupiter in Leo, that he is this heart-led king who serves at this time. But the problem is that he is coming into this threshold of kingship in this year, in the myth of 2026, in amongst, let's go back, in amongst like the consequences starting to affect the the systems, the structures, the people, the communities, as like boundaries and structures have been dissolved and are being reformed. And as they're being reformed in areas, there's a sense that we're like building things that we're not yet ready to build. And alongside this, we have this Promethean fire as Uranus enters Gemini, and misinformation spreads like wildfire, and the technologies that are being developed like faster than we can integrate them, faster than we can even understand their capabilities. And so that is the moment at which this benevolent, jubilant king takes his throne. And is he capable of holding this information? And so, yeah, so thinking, oh, I was supposed to just be talking about Uranus and Gemini. So thinking about this relationship with, we already did that with Uranus and Gemini. He's Jupiter amplifies what he touches. And so where information is moving fast, he just expands that energy. And so the question is, can some of this settle as wisdom as we move through this time, as Jupiter moves through Leo? Is there a sense that some of the information, some of the technology is landing as wisdom, is actually being integrated, is actually being expressed by a wise king on the throne? And then as he trines that Saturn Neptune conjunction, and I probably should have explained the aspects piece of this. Each of the aspects that Jupiter is making are really easy flows of energy. There's sextiles and trines, and like even the opposition to Pluto. It's like the energy is flowing, the energy is collaborating, and they're in alignment with each other. Their goals are in alignment with each other. So where we see Jupiter expanding that information in Gemini, he's like just making the inspiration bigger, making the technology bigger, making it more profound, more exciting. And then as Jupiter trines that Saturn and Neptune conjunction, it will be a little while after the conjunction has actually happened. But Jupiter and Saturn, this is a father-son relationship, Zeus and Kronos. So Saturn or Kronos is the father, and Zeus is the child, and ultimately Zeus defeats Kronos and becomes the king. They're both king gods. And Saturn has this old, wise, like creation of the universe kind of energy about him. I mean, the universe was created by his father and that generation of gods, but he knows how things came together. The Titans were here before the people. And so he saw the building of civilization. He saw how structures were created, and he was a part of how time came to even exist, how these structures that support the entire world, how they were created, how they came into being. And so as Saturn speaks to Jupiter, we see this like abundant God of expansion speaking to this God who is building structures, and he's building structures before he feels ready to build structures. He's building structures fast. He's creating something to hold this unstable information energy that we're moving into. Saturn has like a big plans, big things that he's trying to achieve. And Jupiter is fueling that. It's like having this conversation about like how can we build these epic structures that are full of this heart-led energy and that are abundant, that are serving the people. Um, and then and then we have this conversation with Pluto. Now these are opposite each other. Jupiter in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius. And this is a conversation between Olympus, between the land of the gods and the underworld where Pluto rules. Like, how is the underworld shaping what is coming through at the moment? We are aware that like nothing can grow without the compost, without the without anything to feed it. And feeding things it comes through a kind of death, a kind of devouring. That is how things are fed, by devouring something else. And the underworld is where the things that are devoured comes from. And so the question is, like, is this leadership, is this king serving his people, or is he feeding from them? Is he exploiting them? Is he using them for his own gain? Is this consequence field across humanity, across systems and structures that hold us, that hold people, is that being exploited, or is that being nurtured and cared for by this king? And then, and then we meet our queen of this year. Venus has these cycles of descent and ascending back to her throne. And each cycle takes about 9 months. The total cycle is 19 months. She spends 40 days retrograde right in the middle. And at the end of this year, in October, November, she is going to be retrograde in Scorpio. She's going to meet the sun. And at that point where she meets the sun, this is her coronation. This is her returning to her throne as the queen. And when I work with these Venus cycles, I work with her under her name as Inanna. Inanna is maybe the oldest recorded goddess. It's the oldest story that was ever written. It's the story of Inanna. And she has this story about her descent where she hears the call of her sister and she moves through these 7 gates to the underworld. And as she moves through the final gate, she meets her sister and she's sentenced to death. And her uncle Enki sends these creatures to come and revive her and save her and bring her back. And her release from the underworld is negotiated and she returns to her throne. But as anyone who's ever experienced a descent journey knows, you can't move through that unchanged. As you return from a descent, you're a new person. There's something beneath the surface that has changed. There is a depth, there is an understanding, there is a loss of innocence. And that is what Venus brings in Scorpio. As she is crowned, she returns as a queen who understands loss, who understands grief, who understands what it is to be put to death and to be revived. And so as she is crowned, as she meets with the sun again, this time she began the year meeting with the sun at its furthest point, at the point of her death, like right in the first week of January. But in October, I feel like it's in October the 24th, she meets with the sun again. And this happens in Scorpio. This is the final time that this will happen in Scorpio for hundreds of years now. And so she begins a new cycle. She completes an old cycle that she began 19 months earlier in Aries, and she begins a new cycle as this Venus and Scorpio queen, a Venus who understands depth, who understands transformation, who understands what it is to be the queen in the darkness, to know your desires, to know what you love, and to allow that to shape you even when it hurts, even when it brings suffering. She understands these things. And then she emerges as a morning star. So as she crosses paths with the sun, She moves ahead of the sun so that she will begin to rise before the sun in the morning. And even though she's not quite visible yet, she's still too close to the sun. She's a morning star at the point that Jupiter meets with Mars and the South Node. And Venus has questions that need to be answered. She wants to know how can Jupiter rule in this time? What was his initiation? What was his descent? Does he know what it is to descend? Does he hold that kind of depth? And if he doesn't, how can he hold that kind of kingship throughout this year? How can he survive this story, this journey that he is traveling through, if he doesn't know what it is to go on his own journey of descent, to experience his own inner darkness and to face his own shadow? And as Jupiter meets the South Node brings up these old stories, the old myths of kings and leaders and the ways in which they succeeded and held their heads high, they held their thrones with integrity, and also the ways in which they betrayed their people, which they betrayed themselves, in which their families fell apart, in which their whole kingdoms fell. And ultimately, every kingdom falls sooner or later. And these myths are being remembered alongside Mars, the god of war, the god who asks us what we want to fight for. And the questions are, what do we want to fight for? What does Jupiter in Leo want to fight for? Does he want to fight for his throne, or does he want to fight for his people? Is he fighting to hold on to something that is dying, that is ultimately not going to last? Or does he want to fight for something that is worthwhile? Does he want to fight for the future? And there is this tension between the optimistic, heart-led, almost performative on a shallower level version of Leo, and this deep understanding of Scorpio, that you can't have anything without death, that nothing exists without sacrifice, that if you want something badly enough, that you ultimately need to be able to fight for it, to lay something down for it, to make a sacrifice along the way. And so I feel like this might be my last slide. Oh, and so the next descent begins. And I think this is the lesson that we need for this year. That as we are asked to lean into the earth that will support us, the energy of slowness, of groundedness to support us this year amidst everything that shifts and changes, that there needs to be an awareness that you can't survive this much change without changing yourself. And that ultimately there needs to be a descent. And the journey that Venus goes on through these 7 gates that we call Venus gates that lead to the underworld, at each one, she removes one of her sacred items of power. Jewelry or clothing that represents something that is one of her goddess powers, her divine me's. And as she layers them down, she is able to be reshaped. She is able to be reborn. And so this, I think, is the journey that we are looking to as we reach the end of the year. This is a time for us to allow ourselves to be reshaped by all of the change, all of the newness, all of the things that we thought would last that didn't, all of the things that we thought or hoped would happen that didn't. As we reach the end of that, this is a time for us to let go of our expectations, let go of our identity, of the person that we thought we were, so that we can allow ourselves to be reborn into something new, something that is ready for this new world, something that knows how to create beauty, how to collaborate with the universe, how to be shaped by the stars and how to create something magical alongside them. And so I want to offer you these journal prompts or gentle reflections. You can screenshot and maybe go through in your own time to think about some of the themes that we've looked at throughout this whole series, but particularly today. These planets are not passing through you, they are voices within you. This threshold is not a single moment, it is a year-long journey that we walk together. So these are my offerings. If you would like to book a reading with me to explore how some of these themes are showing up in your own charts, which planets are really collaborating with you this year, which ones are calling you to a new understanding of who they are and how they want to work with you, and which planets are bringing challenges, are asking you to change and to evolve and to grow through this year and the way that they're aspecting your planets, then please consider booking a reading with me. I'd love to explore how these things are showing up in your chart. And now we're going to look at a chart. And this week we're looking at my chart. So this is me. And as I was looking, oh, my screen just went blank. I don't know if you saw that too. But yeah, this is my chart. And as I was preparing this, I realized that I probably left too many objects in here to make it very clear, but I'm going to talk you through it, so it will be fine. So this is my ascendant. This is Scorpio. This chart was generated on Solarfire, which is the astrology software that I use. So yours probably won't look exactly like this, but it will also look similar enough for you to be able to like use this information to decode your own chart, which you can create. Just Google free natal chart. I like astro.com charts, but there are a lot of different options out there that are all just slightly different, and some might be slightly easier to read than others. But yeah, this is me, Scorpio ascendant, and this is my sun and my moon. So your sun is like a circle with a dot in it, and your moon just looks like a moon. And my sun and my moon are both in Pisces. Um, and they're both like right at the bottom of my chart because I was born in the middle of the night. So if we talk about the aspects that we're seeing this year, the planets that we've seen moving through, can't see this super well because it's on a different screen, but at the bottom here is Aquarius, and Aquarius is where Pluto has just moved into. And so anything that you have in Aquarius, which is these like two wiggly lines here, at some point in the next 20 years, it's going to be activated by Pluto. Now, I have Jupiter here at 8 degrees. So I've probably got a couple of years before Pluto gets to that one. But also, this is halfway between my Pluto up here in Scorpio and my Mars down here in Taurus. Aquarius is right in between. And so um, around about now, actually, when Pluto's at 3 degrees, he is squaring both my Pluto and my Mars and creating this tension triangle that we call a T square. And so that is something to really think about. Like these are growth aspects. Squares are growth aspects. And Pluto, square Pluto, that is something that everyone goes through, usually around about your 40s, but it really does depend on where your Pluto is. Pluto doesn't have the most consistent orbit on account of it not really being a planet. It's a little bit small and it's got a bit of a wonky orbit. So some transits take it longer than others. But yeah, square between like 40 and 50 years old, I think. Um, and so that will be Pluto asking me questions about like what transformation have I had in my lifetime? Like what, as I reach this midlife point, one of these midlife transits that I'm going to talk about now, like what are the things in my life that need to die that are no longer serving me? And what is the transformation that I've been seeking? Have I achieved it yet? Those are the questions that Pluto is going to be asking me. And because I have Pluto opposite Mars in this tension here, Mars is also asking me, like, what are you prepared to do for it? Are you going to fight for this? Is this something that you want to go to battle for? Because we could go to battle for it. And thinking about like how do I want to express that fiery energy, those big questions that Mars is asking me, like, we really want to do this? Um, and so that's Pluto. And then we have this Saturn Neptune point here, right at the end of Pisces, beginning of Aries. So these are like my Aries placements. This is Aries here, and this is Pisces down here. Um, so this this point right at the end of Pisces, that's where my sun is in the final degree of Pisces. And then in the first degree of Aries, 0 degrees Aries, that is where Saturn and Neptune are both meeting. So they've been sat on my sun for the past year, and it's really felt like this cycle of becoming and unbecoming, of like reshaping my identity just as it dissolves, just as it shifts and changes again. And that has been a journey that I've been going on this year. But literally, as Saturn moved out of Pisces last week, I really felt a lightness about that. And it's not even a degree away from my sun, but there is something about that cusp, like as it moves into a new zodiac sign, there's a real shift in the energy. And so this Saturn and Neptune conjunction, they're still pretty close on my birthday. So my solar return chart has Saturn and Neptune pretty close to my sun. And I have been feeling Neptune on my sun for a really long time. But one of the fun things about being a Pisces anyway is that Neptune feels like very familiar energy. It feels very Piscean. And so not as uncomfortable as Saturn has been. But yeah, that's moving on into Aries. And then, of course, I have like these other planets in Aries. So I have a few asteroids in here. This is Pallas Athene, and then we've got Mercury and Venus, and then Black Moon Lilith as well. And so Saturn is going to transit over all of those over the next year and a bit. And so we will see like Saturn tends to bring themes of restriction and maturity. So thinking about like Pallas Athene, goddess of wisdom, we're asking like what wisdom, what battle wisdom am I integrating? How am I using my words wisely with Mercury? How am I thinking in a way that is wise and that brings maturity, that brings structure, that is not in conflict, that is like congruent with what it is that I'm trying to achieve. With Venus, we're asking those questions of like, what are my values that I want to build with? What do I really love? What do I want enough to really build structure and devotion around? And Black Moon Lilith is very close to my Venus. So also this idea of like what are we what are the shadows of that are coming through? What are the pieces that I may have been hiding from, that I may have been expressing in ways that are not super healthy. That dark feminine energy there, and also the ways in which that can free us, like looking into that shadow, how can it free me from expectations, from like the very traditional saturnine ways of being, ways of being woman, and being free to express something that is wilder and deeper. Um, yeah, I feel like I'm going through this very slowly. Sorry. This isn't too indulgent talking about my own chart for an hour. But we then have Uranus moving into Gemini. And at the front of Gemini, we have my Chiron. So stepping into that Chiron in Gemini space. And I believe that I spoke about this last week when we looked at Lauren's chart. I think she had Chiron in Gemini too. But Chiron and Gemini can represent these ways in which our voice has been shamed, or we've been told to like not be so confrontational, ways that we have, no, not so much that, that's more Aries, ways in which we've been misunderstood. We've been misunderstood. We don't feel like people see us or get what we're talking about. People perceive us as yeah, misperceive us. And so these woundings, I'm trying to avoid saying wounding. I don't know why I feel like resistance to saying that about Chiron, because I feel like Chiron is our teacher, particularly as we grow older. I think this maybe lands differently if you're in your 20s and you have Chiron transits. It can be much more related to that wounding, to the like feeling of being misunderstood. But as we grow older, um, and we have these Chiron transits, and anyone with Chiron in Gemini is going to be a little bit older. We're going to be in our like 30s, 40s. That speaks to like how we can transmute that into wisdom. How can we help other people to feel understood? How can we listen better? How can we communicate better due to the lessons that we've learned from not feeling understood, from not feeling heard, from maybe getting our words mixed up, maybe uh, getting things wrong, and taking that really personally, like taking that really hard. There are lessons there that land more deeply as we get older. So I wonder if, as Uranus comes through here, there will be liberation around my voice, around explaining who I am, around explaining what it is that I do, and people recognizing that and understanding what I say. And then what else are we talking about? Leo. Let's talk about Leo. So Leo's up here. So Jupiter is moving through like Cancer and Leo this year. So this is my eighth house. And there will be like an opposition to Jupiter as well. So thinking about like a Jupiter opposition is part of a Jupiter cycle. So every 12 years, Jupiter comes back to wherever it is in your natal chart. So this is halfway through that cycle. And it's almost like a check-in point, like what does this sign have to teach us about our journey with Jupiter? And we're halfway through a cycle. Like, what is it that we are manifesting? What are we expanding in our lives? And for me, like this Leo and Aquarius, like opposite signs, have so much to teach us about each other. So asking questions about like how can we step into more of a leadership space that serves the community? How can we allow ourselves to be visible rather than just hiding in a crowd? Um, yeah. And then like the Venus and Scorpio piece as well. This is gonna land fairly close to my Pluto. And this one here is Vesta. She's an asteroid as well, a goddess of service and the temple priestess. And so thinking about what does this mean as like for my service as scooched forwards. My service as a priestess of transformation, like How is that being deepened and understood in a new way through this Venus transit? How is Venus guiding me into a deeper understanding of Scorpio and of what it means to hold that energy at my ascendant and for my Saturn and my South Node and Vesta and Pluto? What is Venus teaching me about those things? And you can obviously apply that to your own Scorpio placements. And like, even if you don't have planets there, like, which house is it in? How is it aspecting other parts of your chart? So, the future doesn't need more heroes. It needs people who can stay present, relational, and devoted as the world reforms beneath their feet. This is the lesson of the myth of 2026. And I really hope that you have enjoyed traveling this journey with me and exploring these themes. I am going to stop recording now, and I will share this as a replay with. So thank you everyone who's watching the replay. Now we're going to move into a Q&A session for everyone who is here.